Welcome to the Defenders of Business Value, the podcast that helps business owners unlock the value they've built and exit on their terms. I'm your host, Ed Meiseglan, and for the last 30 years, I've been helping business owners prepare, grow, protect, and ultimately sell their businesses. Whether you're a business owner, a buyer, or an advisor guiding others through the process, if you want to make your last deal your best one, you are in the right place. So let's get started. So most business owners I talk to aren't short on effort, right? They're really busting their tails, but often they're a little shy on clarity. They've got what they perceive as strong team, strong service, strong product, but yet the business is, somewhat chaotic, right? And that's where today's guest comes in. So Ashley Walters, she's a EOS implementer. And for those of you who don't know what EOS stands for, it's Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's based off the book called Traction. And she not only is an EOS implementer, but she blends the second skill set, which is a certified exit planning advisor. So in our conversation, we talked a lot about how EOS works. What does it look like when a business is operating well? Not just does it make money, but is it de-risked? Is it operating in a manner that the next person can come in, see what it is, and actually step into the ownership role? And her job is accountability and helping you grow and scale your business. In my case, to help business owners recognize their value and how to someday make transferable value. So I hope that you enjoy my conversation with Ashley Walters. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ed. I'm excited to be here with you today.
EOS is so near and dear to my heart for a bunch of reasons. I'm a value guy. I am always trying to figure out how we can help people maximize their value. And so I'm looking forward to diving in. But before we get started, and for the people that are on YouTube, it's easy because they can see what's in the background for you. But for those that are not, would you describe the picture behind you and what it signifies?
Yeah, so the picture behind me, my daughter was a swimmer. She's 20 now, but at the time she's about 10 years old in this picture. And she had just gotten her best time at an outdoor swim meet. And my husband captured the photo of her and I high-fiving. And she drew that as an art project later in high school. And I keep the picture behind my desk because really when I work with teams, my job is to help them not only have the hard conversations, but to be there to give them the high fives.
I mean, it's a great picture and she's a great artist.
Thank
I
you.
mean, it is. All right. So EOS and exit planning, you are both. And I'm just curious to know how a system like EOS actually helps people prepare. And I'm just kind of curious to know how, if EOS and exit planning had a baby, you've got a practice
Yes.
like yours. What does that look like?
Yeah. So for me, what that really looks like is when you step back and somebody decides they want to exit their business. A lot of times it's, well, have I done the right things to grow value in my business? That's where EOS and the exit planning criteria kind of form together and meet. So for EOS, it's really about how do we make sure that your business, we'd like to say we get that vision really clear. We make sure that we're getting traction. So your team is actually executing on that vision. And we've got a healthy, functional, cohesive leadership team and a business that runs without you. So that overlays the 4 C's of intangible capital that anybody from exit planning or a buyer is coming in to look at. Your human capital, that overlays into EOS as being the right people in the right seats. Your customer capital, making sure we've got enough of the right core customers that this new buyer has something that they're actually purchasing, and those relationships aren't dependent on that owner. From a structure standpoint, making sure we've got a structure of the business that will actually exist still without that owner. It's not owner dependent. We've got a good management team that's in place that's going to stay. And from a social capital, making sure that business has a good brand out in the marketplace.
Transferable value, right? Transferable value is what a buyer is looking for. And there's differences in that earning stream, right? And I think as you were talking about, the overlays between exit planning and EOS, the business owner needs to recognize that earning stream is truly what someone's buying, right? You see somebody that is, all right, I want to exit at some point. That's my ultimate goal. So you start building the transferable value. But for those business owners that don't understand that, what is transferable value versus what's just business value to the owner?
Transferable value. Again, it comes back to what is actually still here without that owner being in the business. Is there a good cash flow? Making sure that there is something to buy in the first place, making sure that we truly understand that those relationships aren't solely dependent on the owner, and we have other people in the business that are going to be there to stand that up, making sure that they can transfer that on to the new person.
All right. So when we're looking at the structure of a business, getting the structure of the business right before who's doing the work. Talk to me about that structure conversation. How's that?
The structure conversation is always an interesting one. We hit that day one in EOS. I tell them when they walk into my session room, you've left your title and your ego at the door, because we're going to take a structure first, people second approach. The way I talk about it is we have to structure this business as for what is best for the business. How do we really grow and scale this business? And that may mean that even though you've been in this seat for a long time, it's not the right seat for you if we're going to continue to grow and scale. So we step back, we figure out what really are the functions in the business. What do those functions truly need to be accountable for? And then and only then do we start putting names in seats.
Is there lots of friction? I'm trying to figure out how someone like you shines the light on this is what we could be, right? Because you're showing up and that's what you're saying is that this can be so much more if we have this operating system over the top of it. So how do you do that?
Yeah, so let me just give you an example. I had a company with 3 owners and one longstanding CFO that had been in the family business for 40 years. And I got to tell you, this was a 6-hour conversation to get the accountability chart right for this business. Because stepping back and really saying the person whose family name was on the business isn't the person who took the visionary seat in this business. And that team had a very gracious, but had some very hard conversations. And my job is to really help them facilitate and say, okay, who really has the God-given gifts and talents to really shine in this seat and really get each and every person on that team working in their sweet spot? Because even if you've been in the business a long time, you may not have been working in your sweet spot. You just might have been working where you were supposed to be at the time and filling the seat that was needed. So from the structure conversation, we really step back and look at those accountabilities. When you think about a marketing and sales seat, what are the strengths? What are those things that seat needs to really deliver? So we really get clear on that. But in EOS, we believe there's a visionary and an integrator in every business. So let me come up to that top level. So the visionary and integrator seats in a business are highly customizable. Oftentimes, the visionary is the CEO of the business. That's the person that shows up with 100 ideas to every meeting, and honestly, about 3 of them can be executed on. And it's the integrator's job to tell them that we can only execute on so many of these ideas. So the integrator is really that glue of the business. And the integrator really says, okay, sales, marketing, ops, customer care, finance, let's make sure that they're working all really well together. So when we step back and say, how do we make sure this is happening well? And we identify which one of those or how those accountabilities need to be in each seat, then it allows us to have the right conversation of, well, whose sweet spot is this?
And when you do that, is that driven from the business owner or are there personality tests? Do you do predictive index or strength finders, or how do you determine? Because I'm assuming this is probably one of the most important conversations, right?
I don't like to pigeonhole anybody. In EOS, we do use Colby. It's a tool that shows how you show up in the workplace. So it is definitely a tool we use, but when we're having that accountability chart, it's usually really obvious to the people in the room. Sometimes it's the hard conversations because this just wasn't what I was doing and this wasn't what I thought.
So on that conversation, who's in the room? I mean, is it whole team kind of thing? Is it leadership team? Is it ownership?
It is just the leadership team. So sometimes there's an owner. And if we figure out that they don't have a seat on the accountability chart, we put them in something called the owner's box in EOS. And that means they have owners meetings, but they're not in the day-to-day operations. So they don't truly have a seat that needs to be in that meeting.
So when a buyer bumps into a company that's running on EOS, what does
Yes.
that company look like in practice? And what does that buyer need to, I don't want to say be aware of, but when you're buying this company that, you're going to have to adopt, that part of what you're buying is this operating system that it's running
Yes.
on, right? So have you bumped into that, and what does it look like?
Yeah. So honestly, it's a major bonus for a buyer. And that's one of those things that buyers actually look for are businesses that are running on EOS, because they know if a business is running on EOS, it should be running much more efficiently and should be very profitable. And we should have worked through a lot of the right people and the right seat issues before that buyer has walked in the door. I think for the buyer, it's getting up to speed on the language, learning what that operating system is, what it means, and how to make sure that they can continue the operations in that manner.
Everybody hates meetings, right? But the funny thing is that EOS is driven a lot by meetings. So how do you make those meetings ultra productive? Because the people I know that are doing it, we're not hanging around. This is business
No.
and we're done.
So let me come at it this way, Ed. We actually try to get you to have less meetings. Our goal of EOS is to have one weekly leadership team meeting. That meeting ran properly should get rid of the rest of your meetings. And it should get rid of the death by meeting culture that you may be living in your organization, right? So if we can really structure a good, and we believe in a 90-minute meeting for that leadership team, and we have a set agenda, we start on time, we end on time, and we're making sure that we're talking about the most important issues in your business.
I have been reading so much more, that the most effective teams, right, are sensitive to time. And I mean start time, end time. And the deliberate nature, just by virtue of, we start at 9, we're done at 10 or 10:30 on the dot. It's not going to go over. You can set your clock by it. That helps everybody because it's deliberate coming from leadership that they're sensitive to everybody else's team.
Yeah, leadership, sets the tone. And what you tolerate, you promote.
I'm curious to know from an owner that's going to say, this is what we're going to do, to the adoption of the leadership team, to then coming full circle, what surprised the leadership team, what surprised the owner.
Day one, and I had a leadership team that I kicked off last week. I said, what was your memory today? What was the most important thing that stood out to you today? The owner hands down said, the accountability chart. Trying to get our arms around this for 2 years on our own, and we just couldn't figure it out. So he felt that he had the clarity to walk out of that room, and he now knew what the right structure was for his business. Now his leadership team, they had a different answer, and their answer was rocks. In EOS, we use the word rocks for priorities, so you can think of those as one and the same. And his staff member looked at me and she said, Ashley, we have never been clear on what it is we're actually doing and what we're executing on. I now know what I need to execute on for the next 90 days. And she just said that was such a sense of relief for her. So rocks are your quarterly priorities. Every quarter, we want the business to take 3 to 7. So what are the 3 to 7 most important things that we must get done in this company in the next 90 days? And then for the individual, what are the 3 to 7 most important things that must happen in their function?
How do you make the priorities? Because I'm assuming when you show up and now all of a sudden it's like there's a level of excitement like, oh my gosh, we might actually be able to kill this. What happens? Because I could only envision if we rolled it out here, there would be so many people saying this is priority. How do you work through that?
Yeah, so we give everybody a few quiet minutes. They write down what do they think are the most important things that this business must accomplish in the next 90 days. I then go to the board and I make a list of what everybody in the room said. And then we play a little game called Keep, Kill, Combine. And we get down to a shorter list.
Keep, kill, or combine. Nice.
And then from there, we say, okay, we've got a shorter list now. What really stands out as the most important priorities? And then the team dictates from there. We pick those 3 to 7, but they all have had their ideas on the board. They all have had their voice heard in the room. And from there, we can build that cohesive list of, okay, we all align that these are really the most important things.
Who is EOS designed for? Is there like an avatar of, you know what, the EOS system works best for X? What does that look like?
Yeah. So ideally, it's 10 to 250 employees is that core market for EOS.
Got it. So I have this momentum question, right? And I have to believe, I think the rocks is offsetting any lapse in momentum. You know what I mean? We're constantly making goals. If you're making goals and the right goals, how are you possibly falling backwards, right? Or no?
What I watch for is, are they phoning it in? And by that is, are we hitting softballs for rocks? Are these really the 3 to 7 most important things that you've got to get done this quarter? Or is that really a to-do?
What's the difference between a rock and a to-do?
So a rock is something that it's going to take you at least 3 weeks or more to accomplish.
That makes sense. And a to-do is, I got to make 5 phone calls today. I get it.
Exactly.
In my practice, ownership tends to always be the obstacle for just about anything, whether it's internal or external, right? But the business owners that we work with, they're owner centric, right? And
Yes.
lots of things flow through them. So how do you have this conversation? Outside of the X's and O's, there is a whole nother layer that you have no idea what's going on in that business owner's head. So I'm curious to know, how do you have that conversation when everything is flowing through? And by the way, and you're exactly right, when the value is centered in the owner, it doesn't mean that the business isn't saleable, but every buyer is going to have to mitigate their risk associated with where that risk is found. So how do you help them identify it? Because it'll totally change their value composition.
Yeah. So EOS really helps you hold up that mirror. And not only that mirror for the team, but for yourself. And in EOS, there really isn't any place to hide because we've gotten really clear on what it is that you need to deliver, even as the visionary.
What is often that delivery? Because the business
Yeah.
owners, it's like, well, I deliver lots of things, so what's your secret sauce? What is the one thing that you can do here that no one else can do? What does that look like?
Yeah. So we get really clear on that when we've done that accountability chart. But sometimes what I find is that visionary can honestly, dare I say, be the troublemaker in the business. They're the meddler. And a lot of times my conversations come along with, let's go back and look at what we said we were going to let our integrator do. Because a lot of times the P&L responsibility will belong to my integrator, as well as hiring and firing and all of those major people issues. So I can let the visionary go live and do visionary things, right? But when they're not performing on those, or when they're meddling, we can come back and say, okay, this is what you said, but this is what I'm seeing. Can you help me understand the difference?
One of the things I've been thinking about while you were talking is the smaller companies, right? I don't want them to check out because I do think that it may not be the ideal, but it still can be implemented, right? So the sub 10.
I've implemented for a company as small as 3. We were down to 2 at one point, and they were doing 450,000 in revenue. So someone that small, they have gone on to successfully do it. They were highly committed and they graduated and they are just growing and scaling. And, they're actually even looked at doing buying another business this year. It's been exciting to watch them. So yes, when we talk about core target market, 10 to 250, but yes, I have definitely seen cases smaller and larger.
Rock on. So those that are familiar with EOS, when you've operated, especially like legacy businesses, you've operated in a particular way and now all of a sudden you introduce rigidity, right? That's not a bad thing. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
So when you introduce that, how do you bridge that gap? How do you convince or demonstrate that this is a more effective way to operate the business?
So a lot of times you can let the data speak for itself. The numbers show how successful EOS is, right? There's over 100,000 businesses running on EOS. It's a tried and true operating system. It's not one of those things I'm just throwing at someone. So I've got the data to back me from that perspective. And honestly, we talk about EOS as a human energy system, and we're trying to manage the human energy. So If we can manage the human energy and we can all get really aligned, man, it's amazing what happens.
I see it. One of the things that I have admired about you is where you find your practice. Here's sweet old Ashley here. She's going into machine shops and into manufacturing companies that are notorious for, just brash males, I guess I don't mean to be stereotypical, but my point is that it's so interesting that you can come into a manufacturing business and totally change it. So I'm curious to know why that is. Have you identified, I can walk in here and here's why it works for me?
So, background. I look like sweet Ashley here, but let me tell you, I'm holding you accountable, Ashley, and we're going to make it happen. And I have no problem doing that. I grew up in tech and manufacturing, so I'm a tech person by trade. I spent a number of years at a manufacturing company where they had been a spinoff, and we had to reset that business from the ground up. So what did all those systems and processes look like? My magic is I love how things flow through a business. And in manufacturing, there is no better space than to watch how things flow.
We're living in an age of AI and huge changes that are coming at businesses real quick. You have AI agents that are replacing people. You've got, potential robotics and things like that. I'm curious to know what the EOS conversations are like around there, especially as you're focusing on who's in the right seats, because that person in the right seat may no longer be a person.
So first off, I believe that if you're not playing with AI, you're not a leader that understands AI, you're going to get left in the dust. I also think AI is a thought partner. I think where people are struggling is they are trying to use AI to replace all the things. Where we need to focus on is where can AI help improve the things that we do over and over? Where can it come in and hit that low-hanging fruit? Because quite frankly, your people have better things to do than some of the repetitive tasks they do over and over every day. If we can automate some of that, we can elevate our teams, we can elevate our people, and we can use it as our superpower.
Well, it's funny you say that because, when we're doing our work, we've got tons of NDAs that are coming in, right? And AI, we're test driving some things where, it's automatically doing what we need it to do in order to write to the database and alert the broker and so on and so forth. Well, there is, and hopefully they're not listening to this. I mean, there's radar lock on that person that may no longer be a necessary function for them. And so now, as the leader of the company, now I'm sitting here going, all right, I got to figure out where do they fit in? That's a real hard conversation. But again, if you approach your business as an asset, this is what's best for the business. And that's where your allegiance should lie as the leader, right?
Yes. Why don't we put the company first?
Yeah. So, I mean, are you having those conversations? And if so, what does that look like?
I am not seeing a lot of 100% replacements.
Good. That's a great answer because I think a lot of people are absolutely terrified that that's the only answer.
Yeah, I think it's all about, and I'll even go back to a situation of early AI days where we were playing with OCR and I was using OCR to read in orders for a factory. Well, the big fear was the people that were working in the order entry were going to lose their jobs. That did not happen. In fact, it helped them not have to mess with some of the messy details that OCR could take care of for them. And it helped us process orders faster.
As you're implementing, are you now part of the idea team or are you just the facilitator of where that company wants to go? Are you now into the, let me help build your business or, and I've got some ideas to help you, or you have the ideas and I'm just going to help you build it?
So I show up in 3 roles in the EOS world, and that's teacher, facilitator, and coach. So early on in the journey, it's a lot of me teaching the tools, a lot of making sure that they understand, because I want my leadership team to be able to go out and teach those tools to their next level down, and so on and so forth, right? So facilitator, because most of the time the answer is in the room, and making sure that they're coming up with the answers. I'm not there to be a consultant, so to say. From the coach perspective, I can share that, hey, I've seen this work over here, or maybe this is an idea that I'm seeing other people implement. Maybe that's something to explore, but I'm never there to give an answer. Only high level, this is what I'm seeing is working in other businesses.
We're 90% through this interview, and one thing I didn't even ask you, how did you get into EOS? Where did that even come from?
So, as I said, I spent a number of years at the manufacturing company and really figured out that I loved business more than I loved tech. And really looking at things go through the business. How do we optimize that? How do we make all those systems and processes really hum and work well together? I moved on to a small software company, and that small software company said, come roll out our product. I had already built a product on that platform, so this should have been a slam dunk. I thought this would be easy peasy. 2 weeks in, I know I have a product that doesn't work. Customers that were expecting it 3 years before I walked in the door, and a board ready to pull our money. So I used a lot of what EOS is to really turn that business around. We had to get the right people in the right seats. So we had to part with our entire development team. We had to show that we could deliver. So every 2 weeks, EOS, we run a 13-week sprint. In software, you run a 2-week sprint. Same concept. We had to do a demo for not only the board, but those angry customers to show that we actually could do what we said we were going to do. And we had to rebuild trust in that organization with that accountability. So EOS really helped do that and gave me that framework to know that, hey, all these pieces and parts come together. And from there, I exited or I left that business. The next year, they 10x'd their profit. And I knew that if I could do that for them, I wanted to help other people do this.
So you got a hold of the book Traction, read it, and implement it? That's how you got there? Is that what I heard? Or did you you knew enough of the concepts to kind of swag it and do it yourself?
Yeah. So agile methodology and Traction are hand in hand, 100%.
So EOS now is a franchise, right?
It is.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it gives us all opportunity.
Oh, I totally agree. For me, I look at, here we're systematized. It's kind of like the brokerage. So we own a franchise for IBA. IBA owns a Sunbelt franchise. So we own the state. We don't market it. We own it so we can keep everybody out. I sit there and I'm like, how does somebody think they can franchise the collective relationships, consulting and so on and so forth? The underlying mechanics, okay, I mean, I guess you can give me tools and stuff. So I'm assuming it's the same thing for you guys, right?
So with us, I look at it this way. I think EOS is still getting its legs in Indiana, but really EOS came out of Detroit. So if you go to Detroit, there is a heavy population of implementers. You go to Minneapolis, they have more implementers in Minneapolis per capita than anywhere in the country. And what that tells you is they are serving more customers. They're building out the brand, and more people want to work with EOS because they're more familiar with it. One of the things that I think we're continuing to work is how do we build that brand here locally and get EOS to be a household name in Indiana. So more franchisees will help us do that.
As a value guy, like we sell value, right? I'm just curious to know, and I've asked every EOS implementer that I've ever bumped into, do you keep stats on the value creation? Like, here's where we started. Here's where we're at. Online platforms will give you your incremental value increase. I don't know whether I buy it or not, but nevertheless, it's out there. Does EOS do anything like that? Or do you roll in what you learned at EPI on, you need a business valuation and we're going to periodically measure?
So for EOS Pure, there is no strict, I'm doing X, Y, and Z to value your business. What I am doing is I'm tracking your revenue, your profit, your measurables, whatever that looks like, to say every single quarter, are we growing or not? And I have a software program where I keep all that data. So I know from every session what my clients are doing and are we moving the needle or not? And are we having the right conversation? So I can judge if we're doing the right things. I partner that with, if someone's interested in that, kind of like when we talk about some of the software programs, there's a software program out there that will do those values of your business. And if that's strictly your goal and you've approached me for that, we will use one of those programs to make sure that we've got the value before we go in, make sure that we understand each and every quarter, and we're using that to guide the rocks we're setting to make sure that we're closing those value gaps, if that's specifically what we're trying to do.
So what does it look like when you start the exit conversation?
I have worked with a business, and it was exciting to see the company got bought out by a PE business. And it was a family business, family light manufacturing business. And it was really exciting to see them put the right pieces and parts in place in order to make that happen.
Well, and at the end of the day, the beauty of EOS, I think the good news of the efforts that you put in is that you now don't have to sell, right? Now you have an income producing asset that may or may not be able to, let's say it has the ability at your choice to run without you, right? To a business owner, that should be every bit as exciting and of value than having a successful exit. Because if you're able to step away from that business, you'll sell. If it stops being owner-centric and you have the process and the efficiencies and all the inner workings of the business are flowing, and now it's just a matter of adding gas to it, who cares? I mean, whether you sell or not. And good for you, because that's what everybody's goal should be.
Yes, I 100% align with that, Ed. I really look at it as when I go in, how can we continue to grow the value? And ultimately, one day, if you want to exit, I want you to be able to exit on your own terms.
And at the same time, you know what? If you want to muscle through and freedom's the only thing you seek as you define it, all right, that's fine. But just remember, there may come a time that, now all of a sudden I want to sell, and it's not what you think because you didn't at least explore what creates value in a business. And that's the beauty of EOS. Outside of working yourself out of a job, what is the number one thing a business owner can do that would have the greatest impact on their business?
I think it's install an operating system, whether it's EOS or something else, because a business that's running on an operating system at the end of the day is a much easier business to run. It's a much more profitable business to run. And honestly, it's going to let you have that life that you're looking for.
Rock on. So Ashley, tell us a little bit where we can find you. We'll have all of your contact information in the show notes.
Yeah.
So have at it.
You can find me at Ashley, ASHLEY, .Walters, WALTERS, at EOSworldwide.com from an email perspective. You can also find my business page at accelerateadvising.com. And I'd love to hear from you.
Rock on. You do great work. And I hope people at least explore EOS and buy the book. Go get the book. Come to one of our Accelerant events.
Anybody that's interested in EOS, I'm happy to give them 90 minutes of my time to learn all about them, see if this is even a fit for them, and walk through how EOS can help their business.
Well, and the other side is that you do events, right?
Yeah, happy to be a speaker for your groups as well.
Rock on. Well, Ashley, dear, thanks for being with me.
Thank you. You too, Ed.
Thanks for listening to the Defenders of Business Value. If today's episode helped you think differently about building or selling a business, follow the show so you don't miss what's next. And if you want to become a more informed, confident owner, the one who knows how to grow, protect, and eventually exit at maximum value, subscribe to my newsletter. The link is in the show notes. And if you're ready to talk about your next deal, connect with me on LinkedIn. So until next time, we'll see you soon.